The End. 2b2t's least populated dimension. Not many players have traversed it due to its dangers, the lack of portals to reach it, and the general scarcity of content. A player looks out from the End Island and probably wonders, what's out there? For over 10 years of the server being online, many bases, events, and torments have occurred throughout the years in this massive void of islands, but most people don't know the whole story. This is the entire history of 2b2t's End Dimension. In late 2010, 2b2t began, and as players traveled through chunks for a year, Minecraft entered its 1.0 release phase in late 2011, including the End. Since 2b2t was around a year old and the spawn chunks were already loaded, the strongholds and their portals were missing. Players asked the owner of 2b2t, Housemaster, if he would add end portals, but he insisted that 2b2t can continue without admin interference and an end dimension. But near the end of 2011, 2b2t was backdoored, giving select players access to every block in the game, including end portal frames. These players were Pop Bob and Police Mike 55, and they would travel to NFE, the most established spawn base at the time. Deep underground, they attempted to activate a portal, but when they inserted the Eyes of Ender into the portal frame, nothing happened. They thought Housemaster disabled end portals entirely, so they gave up entering the End and abandoned their portal. In March 2012, a player named XCC2 possessed a stack of portal frames. He believed that a stronghold's portal room had to be recreated block for block for the portal to activate, so he went below NFE, invited Police Mike 55, and built a replica of a stronghold's portal room. After placing all the blocks correctly and inserting the Eyes of Ender into the frames, the portal ignited. In shock, XCC2 and Police Mike 55 stepped into the portal and became the first players in 2b2t's history to generate the End Dimension. After standing around and watching the Ender Dragon fly, they realized they had jumped into the portal without the proper gear to fight, so they jumped off the End Island. Now armed, XCC2 invited JDW99666 to help, and together, they entered the portal and fought the dragon. After a long-fought battle, the dragon was defeated, and JDW managed to grab the dragon egg before leaving. Following the Ender Dragon's demise, many more end portals were constructed at bases all throughout the server, and the dragon egg was duped. In May 2012, after asking around for an end portal location, XCC2 gave the players Bernard Wiseman, Pseudo, and Jacktherippa coordinates to the end portal under NFE. They wanted to build an end base as they did on another server. However, Pseudo's account was cracked and disabled by Mojang during an account migration leak. Due to Pseudo's absence, Bernard didn't want to play 2b2t anymore, so Jack ventured and built the end base for 2.5 months by himself and used his brother's account as mobile storage. Not much happened out here as a void surrounded the base in the middle of nowhere. To Jack, it was peaceful. But one day, Jack logs in to find a netherrack bridge coming into his base. Frantically, Jack searched around, only to find a player named Ruptured Kidney AFK at Jack's Enderman farm. As Jack got closer, Kidney returned to life and told Jack he had the same idea to build a base in the End. Eventually, they became close friends, and Kidney bridged off and made his own platform next door. From that day, Jack kept all his valuables in his 2 accounts and logged out. While Jack was building his base, JDW99666 had duped the dragon egg. In early Minecraft, it was possible to use pistons to make copies of any block affected by gravity, such as gravel or sand. Dragon eggs happened to be affected by gravity as well, and duping machines were used to make multiple copies of them. Hundreds of eggs were produced daily and distributed amongst 2b2t players. One day, Jack logs on only to see himself suffocating in stone. He thinks they were found. As Jack mined the blocks around him, he found himself in the overworld, but at the exact coordinates as the end base. Jack asked around, and XCC2 told him that Housemaster had shut down the End. Housemaster had been inactive for several months, so all these events were happening without his knowledge. When Housemaster realized the End had been generated illegally, he became furious. He went around the server, deleting every end portal created and removing portal frames from players' inventories. He also deleted the end stone that had been brought back from the end and made it so that any end stone that got placed would instantly vanish from here on out. A plugin was installed so that right-clicking on a portal frame would make it disappear. And finally, Housemaster deleted 2b2t's end dimension. After a year of the end being deleted, players started to complain. XCC2 contacted Housemaster and suggested that he got to the spots that should have been generated on 2b2t's map and used the /regenerate command to create fresh chunks that would include strongholds and portals. Housemaster listened and officially reopened the end in May 2013, and players could finally enter. The players Tristan, Taylor112, and a few others slayed the second Ender Dragon. For the following months, the end would be used frequently. Players rushed into the end, creating dirt and stone bridges, leading out from end spawn, and everyone wanted to build an end base. Players like Amalimix, X0XP, and others tried to grass over the end island with infinite grass blocks to make it more like the overworld. Housemaster spawned in massive obsidian towers and a gigantic endstone and cobblestone torus. The torus was rumored that Housemaster was trying to make more islands and make it look more natural, but players never got a clear answer. A player named Levi12 made an end base on the island, and by the end of 2013, Popbob created a secret base not too far from spawn, but was eventually found, and a player named Atrika built a base as well. By this point, end spawn was covered by a massive cobblestone monster created by Fuzzy Puffball. He used a giant lava cast maker device called Scamp. By 2014, most players didn't care much about the end due to its dangers, the lack of portals to reach it, and the general scarcity of content. This was the perfect time for Jack to build a new end base. From March 10th to May 16th of 2014, the server was on a temp map due to the server lagging. By June, Jack had made several friends on the server and was part of Valkyria. The group decided that their next base should be in the end, as no one had done it before. So Jack bridged off 1.5 kilometers over the void and made a gigantic platform with every farm he could get. They knew it would be a temp map, but they got the basic idea for their base. When the server eventually returned to the main map, the whole end base idea was postponed for a while. In August 2014, Housemaster installed a plugin to patch holes in the nether roof, but this also patched holes in the end at Y level 0. If a player walked out anywhere or placed a block, it would update the chunk and generate a giant plot of bedrock. One of Jack's Valkyrian friends, Stupid Walrus, asked him how to build an end base. Jack would tell him about the bedrock platforms and told him to travel a few thousand blocks out, make an island out of bedrock, and build whatever was on top of that, which he did. By late 2014, few players lived in the end, but some players like Kinorana, Carl Plemons, and Pyrobite did. Pyrobite made a large bedrock floor near the end island to house a small base with an ender pearl farm. After the self-grief of Asgard 2 in 2015, Jack gathered materials and decided that since the end had been open for a couple of years and nobody cared for it, why not start an end base? So he walked back to spawn through the nether and crossed an old highway he dug with his friends, the ones who would be at the first original end base. Jack asked Stupid Walrus where he built his end base, and he gave Jack the coordinates. After traveling on the bedrock path, Jack arrived at Stupid Walrus's chateau on the edge of nothing. Stupid Walrus got all the hard work of wrangling the mobs and the common essentials to make a base there, but the massive bedrock path leading right to it was a problem. Jack couldn't live there directly, but he could bridge off a few hundred blocks into the void, lay the foundation, and bring 2 of each animal. At the time, he didn't know what it would look like, but he had an idea from a gigantic stone temple floating at the lands called the Sky Temple of Autism. So he decided to build that, but it would have every amenity possible over the void. As Jack started laying the foundation, XCC2 told Jack that infinite blocks were back. Jack gathered infinite blocks from XCC2 and Pyrobite. Slowly, Jack built from the bottom to the top, eventually shaping the structure into a gigantic tower, its real name being the Sky Pillar of Autism, a homage to the structure at the lands. The name was later changed to Space Valkyria. After the third incursion, a player named Fit wasn't sure what to do with himself. He made a pilgrimage to the end and went as far out as possible. Using a piston airship, he accidentally found Space Valkyria and looked around. He was awestruck and used it as a launching pad to continue traveling. From there, he went out over 15,000 blocks in the end, farther than anyone else had been at the time. Using his airship as a starting point, he started creating a base, known as DFC. In May 2015, Pyrobyte was AFK at Space Valkyria, and someone used the /MSG coordinate exploit on him. Soon after, the players Jerry2013 and Taylor112 came to Space Valkyria to grief it. The base members caught Jerry2013 in the act, and Jerry jumped into the void to escape. Before the griefers would arrive again, Jack decided to bridge off a kilometer and build what is now commonly referred to as Space Valkyria 2, but officially called the Island. Due to Space Valkyria's grief, Jack knew that many players wanted to visit it, which would bring attention to the end. Jack figured that if he somehow deleted all of the end portals, he could build even if they knew where he was and couldn't get to him. Around this time, Taylor112 taught Jack how to destroy end portals with buckets of water or lava, and then went on his alternate account and broke all the end portals before anyone could realize it. This officially shut down the end, and nobody could go into the end for the rest of 2015. For around 9 months, Jack's group held down the end, and in that time, Jack built an entire island in the style of the overworld and planned to make many more, but got bored of the project. Instead, he opted to make a palace almost entirely out of quartz. It wasn't until late 2015 when Mojang announced Minecraft version 1.9 that the end would be updated with new structures and items. By then, Jack was already situated and it was too late to change course. On the bright side, he would first have access to the update's contents. On the downside, players were going to come back into the end. When the update was introduced to 2b2t, Elytra were the go-to item to get. The end was semi-shut down at this point, and players would use Boatfly to travel to end cities for Elytras. Jack was the first player to get an Elytra and named it Elantra. He now had an easy way to get back and forth from the island. But soon after the end reopened, the group Nerds Inc. arrived at the base and griefed it. By this time, a player named Offtopia decided to head into the end with Carl Plemons. When they arrived, there were already player-made scaffold bridges to the newly generated islands. Offtopia traveled to Pyrobyte's now griefed Ender Pearl farm, took some new chorus flowers and one Elytra, and then left the end. With the introduction of generated end islands, the end will have strips of the void left over from the loaded chunks, from past players loading chunks using redstone airships. In 2016, some more players would naturally explore the end and would grief the portals anytime they could. By November, 2b2t was updated to Minecraft version 1.11, and a new dupe was leaked to the public called the Drop Dupe. The update brought shulker boxes to the server, which caused another rush of exploration in the end. Housemaster implemented 9 end portals around spawn, but without the end portal frames. Some players had end portal frame blocks from a back door still in their ender chests during that time, and some would be placed around the overworld. Housemaster would travel around and delete any illegal end portals he would locate close to player bases, some of which have even survived to this day. Jack would dupe materials with another player named Alpha Computer, and together they would find a location in the end to build Space Valkyria 3. He decided to make it around a single end gateway, and a few members would be invited to the base. But one of the members, Monoxide, accidentally used a hack client that was thought to be backdoored, possibly releasing the coordinates to the base. Only a little was built at this location, so the group quickly relocated about a kilometer away to another site. Some bases would be built around the end of 2016, like Enlo Sung, created by Harry Nugget and his friends, and Taragadude's Death Star Soup Bowl. By the middle of 2017, a player named Barondome would build a base called Nexus. After getting his lag machine deleted by Housemaster, a player named Armorsmith set out on a journey to become the first player to see the world border at the end. Using an Elytra Packetfly hack, he went on a trip that lasted an entire week. But on August 16th, Barondome reached the -Z end world border, and the next day, Armorsmith reached the --- end world border and built a base, Armorland. By September 2017, Elytra were disabled due to this hack as it was lagging the server. Around this time, a player named Crowbar01 started building a base known as Incursion. As months passed, Space Valkyria 3's construction went smoothly, but the Rainbow Road was misaligned, making Jack take a break for a few months as he was burnt out. A few months later, Jack returned and was informed by Offtopia that a former Spawn Mason member, Lelaine, had heard of Space Valkyria 3's construction and was actively trying to find it. Chunk trailing was already a well-known exploit, so Jack relocated about 13,000 blocks away. This time construction didn't take as long as the design had already been accomplished earlier. Jack perfected his method and added many more details to the build that the first one lacked. The release of the chunk dupe also helped with the base's expansion, mainly with the construction of the rings. The plan was to fill this space to house an entire city. By early 2018, end spawn had changed compared to 2014. The massive lava cast created by Fuzzy Puffball was gone and was replaced by floating water pillars and blocks. The end island was still intact, but lava casts surrounded the island. New highways emerged, one being an ice highway created by 1I_. Players would build structures near spawn like Dr. Frankfurt, who made a black freighter. Another base near spawn was Space 2K2K, created by Armorsmith's followers. Offtopia and Lelaine will create a base in the end. Lelaine used a duplication glitch to get shulkers, while Offtopia moved some shulkers with stacked armor and other things to the location. Sometime in 2018, Incursion went public due to a museum leak. After a few months, Crowbar went back to have a look as he got someone else to grief it, but all the materials were still there. Since there were no tourists and Elytra was disabled, Crowbar decided to start building there again. He made many things there, like the Isles, Void Rider, Cthulhu, etc. Until January 2019, Housemaster announced in the Servers tab menu that the server will be updating to 1.13 soon, and end portals were re-added. Some players built bases around this time, like P529. By this point, Nerds Inc. had created an exploit called NoCom, which allowed them to ask 2b2t is the block at this coordinate in a currently loaded chunk, and get an immediate yes or no answer. On May 9th, 2019, while Jack was waiting in the queue, he got online, just made dinner, and was building and placing blocks on the outermost ring of Space Valkyria 3. Jack saw Tristan online, and in chat, it showed Tristan was placing TNT through the announcer module. It wasn't unusual, but Jack felt something was odd. He looked around, and nothing was immediately out of place, but there was TNT when he checked the central pillar. Jack thought maybe this was Alpha Computer trolling him, but after speed hacking around the ring, he saw Nerds Inc. members placing TNT. Jack retreated and quickly tried to get ender crystals and gear for combat, but it was useless. It was a 5v1, and there was no way to win. On August 14th, 2019, Elytra were re-enabled. The end spawn island was blown up and replaced with a circular obsidian platform, but other than that, it remained the same. A player named Frickin released his world download of Space Valkyria 3 on the 2b2t's subreddit, which made many players travel to see the ruins in person. Space Valkyria was no more, or was it? Out of curiosity, Jack checked on the original Space Valkyria 3, 13,000 blocks away. It was untouched. Jack decided to return to work on it as it wasn't complete. Jack rebuilt everything from scratch and brought a donkey that survived the grief, which would be used to dupe and resupply materials. Many months went by and the base was still unfound and intact. Jack took a break and joined Offtopia and Lelaine at their location in the end. By this time, the site already had a few structures, and Jack began creating his structure there. Eventually, Jack returned to Space Valkyria 3, but before he left, he and Lelaine would name this location Octopath. On December 8th, 2019, the players GSmack, SkullerG, and others started working on a giant water cube over end spawn. They would flatten out the platform of the end, using the bedrock floor to help assist in the process. To avoid players ruining their project, they used their controversial overworld water cube project to lure players away from the end. Later, GSmack realized they could use an exploit to place unbreakable end crystals at the end platform, disabling it from spawning, so anyone who walked into a portal would fall into the void. Housemaster eventually intervened, restarting the server and deleting the unbreakable end crystals. On December 10th, they had the water cube at Y level 109, and 5 days later, they finished the water cube by adding 106 layers of water in one day, and in total, placed over 150,000 ice blocks to get it done. Not soon after, a player named the Troll 2001 found an exploit using end portals to dupe items. It worked by pushing a donkey with a chest filled with shulkers that only had half a heart into an end portal, making it die from fall damage. The donkey would die twice as it entered the end, doubling a player's items. By the beginning of 2020, Incursion would be griefed. By the middle of 2020, there was an authentication exploit which made the players at Offtopia too afraid to build there. Still, once it was fixed, the group kept finding excuses not to do much of anything and had grown tired of 2b2t. Crowbar decided to move to Offtopia to start constructing a bridge. In May 2020, a Turkish Twitch streamer was casually flying in the end to see the remains of Space Valkyria 3 that was griefed. At some point on his journey, he took a wrong turn and found himself at the original intact Space Valkyria 3. It was a matter of time before others found it, which eventually happened. This finally marked the end of Space Valkyria 3, at least on 2b2t. Shortly after it was found, Jack would find a new location known as Space Valkyria 4 with a couple of friends. But Jack got bored of 2b2t, and it would be abandoned not soon after. By late 2020, N-Spawn was still covered in a massive water cube. Bases built during this time were Andromeda, created by SkullerG, Goujon, G-Smack, 4Pilot, and Red Baron 1991. Another N-base made by H4A had many signs from travelers. From November 5th to the 21st, the players Goujon and Duke Artoris would try to rebuild Space Valkyria 1. They were successful, and many players visited, but it was eventually griefed. A player named Amino Acid attempted to go to the -X world border in November using Bowfly, but was patched 13 million blocks out, so he created a milestone there. A couple of months after moving to Offtopia, Crowbar had built a massive bridge. Every house, market, and storage room was filled with decorations. Eventually, a player named Durka QT accidentally found it using a travel exploit while live streaming with the coordinates on Discord, leading to its destruction on December 21st, 2021. Around this time, a player named Harrisssonn spent much time in the end, testing and exploring. After discovering how broken end gateways were, with players from the Spawn Builders Association, they learned how to teleport players with boats using the gateways. To work, a player simply went to an end gateway and piloted a boat into it. The boat would then appear at end spawn for a fraction of a second, during which time the player being teleported would enter the boat and be transported back to the starting location of the teleporting player. On March 22nd, 2022, Harrisssonn started his trip to the -N world border corner, the exact location as Armorland. Finally reached it on June 12th, 2022. When he arrived, he noticed Armorland was altered into a Spawn Mason's lodge. After this, he found a corner base and teleported many friends using the gateways. This group, the Ancients, were teleported out here to find a spot in the millions to set up a replica of r/place, but on 2b2t called our/place. As more players were teleported, a base began to take shape at the world border due to builders including SMZ19, P529, Joey Coconut, Negative Entropy, Breadloafs, and Mothra, among others. These players were from the Ancients, Astral Brotherhood, Spawn Masons, and Spawn Base Association. This base didn't have a name, but was known as Corner Base. Many events occurred here, and even I was teleported in July. The constant public discussion and streaming of the corner base resulted in groups like the Fifth Column attempting to close off the end to prevent teleportation to the base. They would park accounts at end spawn with Crystal Aura, conducted mainly through Maxi Taxi's interdimensional customs control group. Not soon after, corner base was griefed. By November 2022, Crowbar started building a new end base. As months passed, he created a black hole surrounded by a ring with buildings on top and finished at the beginning of January 2023. By the end of January, a project was started by Zipbag Lock Guy to remove the end's water cube entirely, and his friends joined him a day later. They officially began on January 30th, and with sponges and flying TNT machines created by the project's leader, Cumermen, they could accomplish this rather quickly. For months, 10 players worked non-stop. Zipbag Lock Guy removed around 50% of the water cube all by himself. Poggyboy donated all the resources used for the project by stash hunting. It wasn't all smooth though, as many PvPers were griefing the flying TNT machines and killing members that were draining 0-0. So Avia Sales and Cumermen made a trap on the end spawn platform that killed players who entered the end and defended the project from griefers. Dexterous and Elusor broke all the end gateways using a bug that only worked in the end. Polar Big Bob, Scooby Stain, 1AHR, and XDOM 1405X helped drain. Finally, on February 15th, 2023, the project was completed. After the end water cube's drainage, a player named _XQ would go into the end to check it out. He started flying in the negative X region for about 100,000 blocks, and for whatever reason, he decided to start going diagonal for a while, then back to going straight. Suddenly, he got hit with beacon effects, so he flew back and found Space Valkyria 4 on March 21st, 2023. Today, the end is still very vacant, but who knows how many bases are out there? With the rise of discussion of the end, more players will traverse the void and find amazing things, and even future projects will emerge. This script wouldn't be possible without Jacktherippa. His channel will be in the description, go check him out. Also XCC2, Offtopia, and all these other cool people help with the script, and it wouldn't be possible without them. If you enjoyed the video, maybe smash that like button, or even subscribe, it's up to you. Anyway, stay fast, and see you guys next time.